welcome to the Pursuit of Healthiness podcast. I'm your host, Winanda van Delft. I'm a health and mindset coach, graphic designer, and a cat mom. I love conversations that are on a more raw and deeper level. And today's guest is Ryan. Ryan has been married to her husband for nearly 14 years, and after navigating a challenging time in their relationship without going to couples counseling, Ryan now helps other women to empower themselves to do the same. We are here today to talk about how to communicate in a relationship or in marriage. Welcome, Ryan, to the Pursuit of Healthiness podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you again because we've talked before and I just had a really amazing, awesome conversation. And we were actually talking about your own podcast, right? How is that going?
It isn't yet, but I'm getting there. I have the app that you told me to download, and then I also have a reminder in Asana that pops up every week. So even though I haven't actually started recording, it's sort of starting to become something that I see every week.
Yeah.
And really, it's just a matter of taking the time to record some, which isn't going to take me too long, but I just have to sort of wrap my head around it. I'm still working on that.
I get that. I was there as well. But can you tell a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what we are here to talk about today?
Yeah, so I'm a women's marriage coach, and I help women empower themselves within their marriage to be able to bring that connection and loving communication back, because I think a lot of times we think that the only way to work on our marriage is that we have to do it together, which, even though it sounds counterintuitive, can sometimes make things worse when we try to force each other to work on it together in the way that one of us thinks that it should be done. So like if one partner thinks that it should be couples therapy and the other partner doesn't, it ends up causing tension when one person isn't fully invested in the method. So what I do is I work with women only so that they can work on their side of the relationship, because that's what I did, and it really had a huge impact on our relationship as a whole. And whenever you work on yourself and you change your own perspective, then everything around you changes too. So it's really that same concept of where you work on yourself and then you start to behave differently and your partner or spouse starts to respond differently, and it just has a snowball effect in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. So you said that it worked for you as well. So I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but can you share a little bit about that? Like, why did you felt the need to change in that way?
Yeah, so we got married young, and we kind of had that idea that a lot of people have, which is like, oh, we love each other, and so we don't have to maintain because our love will just take care of itself.
Yeah.
And over time, cracks start to form and annoyances start to seem bigger than they used to be. And then we had 2 kids, and we also already had 2 dogs before we had 2 kids. And so it was starting to compound, and it's never like an overnight change. It's always something that's over time, and then all of a sudden you kind of wonder, how did we get here? And so that's what happened to us. And so we had we tried to have conversations, and we didn't really want to do couples therapy because my parents and his parents did it, and it didn't work for them. They still ended up getting divorced. So we just kept kind of going in circles, and it was getting really frustrating, and we didn't know what to do. So we stopped having the conversations, which at first, was kind of scary to me. So I decided that I was just going to work on myself, and I was going to figure out what I wanted. And as I discovered things like self-care and boundaries and started implementing those things, he started responding differently to me because I was treating him differently, because I had learned how to treat myself. I had, typical mom of young toddlers. I didn't take time for myself ever, and I didn't ask for anything that I wanted, and I always put everyone else before myself. And so I stopped doing those things. And that made a huge difference in our relationship. And another thing that we did together was we started putting our relationship before the kids because they leave.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it is true. Like in the end, they leave and then you're together alone.
yeah, that's what happens so often is that you pour all of your energy into the kids and then they leave and you don't even know each other anymore. And so we realized that that's kind of what we were doing, that was part of our issue. So we stopped doing that. We started making more time for each other. And now we go on a date every single week without fail. It's usually Monday mornings, but if something comes up on a Monday morning, it gets moved to another day. It doesn't get canceled. It just might get moved to a different day. So and we're just a lot more intentional about how we treat each other and how we speak to each other. And it all started with me asking myself, what do I want, and trying to figure out how can I show up differently.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think a lot of people don't realize what is something that I always say is that it's about that you want to be together. And if you want to be together, then you will find a way to make it work instead of giving up. And I think especially that wanting to be together is really important because that's when, like you did, you find ways to stick together instead of finding
Yeah.
excuses not to be together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that I ask people sometimes because sometimes they're not sure what they want to begin with. You know, they know that they don't like where they're at, but then they don't even know what they want. So I will ask a question, if you could snap your fingers and have everything the way you want it to be, what would that look like? And sometimes the answer is without their spouse, but sometimes the answer is with their spouse. And when that's the case, that's what I can help them with because they don't see how they can get to that dream place that they imagine where everything is wonderful. And that doesn't mean perfect, but there's open communication and connection and love and all that stuff. And it's just hard when you're stuck in the mud to be able to see how you're going to get out of that rough spot to get to where it was good again.
Yeah. So if something comes up in like someone visualizes their future without their partner, what what are things that you do then? Are you like, okay, then it's just the end of the relationship, or how can someone move forward from that once they realize like, okay?
I just encourage them to figure out what they want. And if what they want really doesn't involve their partner, then it's time to evaluate the relationship and really figure out what the next steps are. But since I'm a marriage coach and I help women, fix the relationship, that's sort of where we kind of come to the end of the line when if they come to a place where they realize that they don't want to be with their spouse or partner anymore. But there are people out there who help people, peacefully go through a divorce. And so while I'm on the side of, encouraging and helping people to make it work and make it better, I would never push anyone to stay married if they didn't want to. And I feel like divorce is, if that's what your answer is, then that's what your answer is, because nobody should, feel guilt tripped into this lifelong commitment that maybe doesn't feel right after you made it. And we change our minds all the time. So, it's kind of okay if you feel like, I think this is the end of our season here. But if their vision when they are asked a question in the moment like that is, I want to spend more time together, I want us to be more connected, I want us to communicate, then I know that they do want that person in their lives still. And that's when it's time to just help them navigate how to do that, how to shift the energy.
Yeah. So do you think, I know you only focus on women, but are women really different in a relationship than men are?
I think so. I'm still constantly studying that, and like my own marriage is a great example, like that I sometimes sort of take myself, sort of remove myself and sort of look at us as a separate entity for myself, sort of, and watch how I respond to things and how he responds to things. And he is kind of the strong, silent type, which a lot of guys are. And I've noticed that a big thing that comes up with so many women right now is they feel like they're talking to a wall. They feel like they have communication problems.
Yeah.
Because they'll want to talk about something and their husband will maybe just stop talking or leave the room or, start looking at the floor.
Yeah.
And I realized that when he would do that, it wasn't him not wanting to participate in the conversation. He was just thinking. And I wasn't giving him enough time and space to think and then speak. So when he would get quiet, I would just start talking more and getting more agitated because I wasn't getting a response from him in the way that I thought I should get it. And when I started sort of like mirroring his behavior and he would get quiet, so then I would get quiet, all of a sudden he would start talking again and tell me how he felt. And it was just me getting comfortable with that dead space, like the dead air that we are so uncomfortable with silence sometimes, but that's what he needed to be able to feel heard and seen. He needed that quiet couple of minutes to be able to process his thoughts and then speak, whereas I'm just like bleh. So that's a big difference between the two of us. And I have found that there are a lot of other women who feel like that's also a problem, but all you have to do is just give them a little bit of space and time to think, and they'll open up more.
Yeah, I think a lot of women do that. If they don't get an answer straight away, it's like asking other questions. And also because I think most of us women, we probably going to think the worst. Like, oh, he doesn't love me anymore. He's going to leave me. Or what have I done wrong? Or all those thoughts. So we need answers straight away. And as you said, guys tend to be more quiet and they have to think about what they are going to say, especially because men secretly know how women are. So they are probably thinking the right words to say things without hurting us.
Yeah. It's very true. I mean, that's another thing that I talk about is how you say things matters, your tone matters, even almost more sometimes than what you're actually saying, because whatever your intention is, and I think people forget that you're on the same team. So why would you attack them with your words or your tone when really what you want is, more attention, more quality time with them, or, more of your love language being spoken. And for some reason, we default to complaining, judging, insulting even, when that doesn't actually work. That like I posted on my Instagram yesterday, you can't complain your way to getting what you want. It doesn't work. But we have this tendency to be like, oh, I'm not getting what I want, so let me tell you how upset I am about it, instead of turning it around and talking about what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So how can we be more open in communication in a relationship, in a marriage?
I think the first thing is recognizing that if you have different communication styles, and a lot of times with women it's a lot of words, and then with men it's not a lot of words. I mean, there's statistics out there that women speak way more words throughout the day than men do on a regular basis. So I think that would be the first thing, but then also just coming at them with compassion rather than annoyance, because just because they don't see it your way doesn't mean that they're wrong. And that's another piece of it too, is to recognize that most of the time, whatever you are discussing, if you're not agreeing, it's opinions, and neither one of you are right and neither one of you are wrong. So you can get curious about why they feel or think the way that they do, but to just remember that you don't get to make someone wrong just because they don't agree with you.
Yeah. I think that in general, in any relationship, friendships or business relationships, I think a lot of people tend to think like, okay, if you don't agree with me, you are against me. And that's not, most of the time, that's not the case. It's just you have a different opinion. But it doesn't mean that we have to hate each other because of that, or that we have to break up because of that. I mean, there is a space where you can communicate and where you can talk about it. And you are entitled to have your own opinion, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to be the same. Like if you're in a relationship, you don't, God, I hope you're not becoming the exact same person with the exact same opinions. You know, you have different, you are a different person, so you have different opinions.
Yeah, really. And I think sometimes too, especially as a parent, I've noticed I've been able to sort of release a little bit of my judgments on how things should be done, because we each have a role in our daughters' lives, and it's not to be the same person for them. It's I'm the mom, I'm the more gentle one, I'm also more disciplinary, you know, I enforce the rules more, and he is more physical with them. Like when they play, they wrestle and stuff, and that is absolutely not my role as a parent. And so we take on these different pieces of what they need, and when we put them together, it's everything that they need. But if we were each trying to make each other be the exact same person for them, they would be missing things in how they're being raised. And it's taken me a long time to realize that. And that was part of our challenge, is that I was constantly feeling like I knew best and I knew what they needed and I knew what to do, and he didn't. And so I had to allow myself to open up to the idea that he's not wrong and I'm not wrong either. We both have, you know, different brains and we're different people, and that's good for our kids.
Yeah. So especially in couples, first-time parents, like what is the biggest struggle that you see?
For first-time parents, I think the biggest struggle is suddenly not having a clue how to balance your relationship with taking care of a demanding newborn. Because they can't help but be demanding. They can't do anything for themselves. And I definitely both times got wrapped up in taking care of the baby. And you kind of, I remember having this feeling of like, I shouldn't have to be bothered with paying attention to him. I have just given birth to a human, and that is where my attention needs to be. But that attitude creates a rift and pushes him away and makes him, and I definitely, for sure, both times we had kids, on some level made him feel like he was less important to me than the babies, which is really bad. And that was part of our problem. So I would say when you're new parents, even if it's tough, even if you're tired, just make sure that you are still at some point in the day making an effort to show each other that you care about each other. And, you know, when the baby's sleeping, spend a little time together. It doesn't have to be anything crazy because you are going to be exhausted. But just little things that show each other that I'm still here for you and you really are still the most important to me. We just are in this season of no sleep and lots of diapers.
I think that is great. A lot of couples tend to forget each other because I'm not a parent, so I don't know exactly how it feels, but I've interviewed a lot of other women and I've seen other new parents, and what I always say, and maybe I will come back to that someday if I ever have kids, but I believe that you should put yourself on the first place, your relationship underneath, and then the kids. Because as we talked about before, like those kids are going to leave the house someday. And you need to keep yourself sane to be able to keep the relationship going, to be a perfect role model for your kids.
Yeah, that's the other huge part of it, is that you're setting an example for them.
Yeah.
You're the only relationship they see for a long time until they start, get a little older and start making friends and going over to their houses. You are their only example of what a marriage should be like. And I mean, my parents fought all the time. That's all I saw. And when I started going to other people's houses and seeing their parents were not fighting, I thought that was weird. I thought this is, they're just supposed to fight, I guess, because they do it all the time. And with my husband, his parents, they fought, but not like mine. But they just didn't like each other.
Yeah.
And they forced each other to forced family time on each other, sort of as so that people on the outside would think that everything was okay because they were constantly doing things as a family. And so they were just sort of putting on a show a little bit. And that was bad too, because underneath the surface, there was all this resentment building. And so it's just really important to make sure that you're setting that good example for your kids. Like if you think about it that way, I think it's helpful to remember that the kids are going to leave. You're setting an example for them. I think that makes a difference when you're thinking about how you want to show up in your relationship. Yeah. If you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm showing them how it's supposed to be, so I want them to have a good example.
Yeah. So how has it influenced your view on having relationships? Because if I look back at how my parents were, like my dad came home from work, sat on the couch, didn't do anything all night, and then went to bed. That was basically it. And we didn't really do much as a family. So my perspective of having a relationship was different. And I experienced the same as with you when I was with friends and their parents were loving each other. And it's weird to see that if you're not used to that. So yeah. How has that influenced your relationship?
Well, when we first got married, the one thing that we knew we did not want was to have a relationship like either one of our parents had.
Yeah. So
we knew we did not want to be yelling and screaming at each other when we were disagreeing, and we knew that we didn't want to be mean to each other. That's kind of more what his parents were doing, is they were like quietly being awful to each other instead of having like the big blowout fights like mine. And that was kind of it, that we didn't really say, okay, now we know what we don't want, so let's look at what we do want. And I think that was part of our problem too, is that we didn't have a goal or a focus. And so what ended up happening that I didn't really realize is that I'm not like super, super affectionate. And I have to make an effort. Like that just doesn't come naturally to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I didn't get hugs as a child or anything like that, but my parents didn't do that. They didn't hug each other. They didn't hold hands. They didn't speak kindly to each other. And so I didn't think about those smaller things, the loving things that I would want. And it took me a long time to realize like that's very important to him. That physical touch is his love language. Like he comes up and bear hugs me all the time, and that's something that he enjoys. So I make an effort to kind of like do the same for him now, whereas before I even knew what love languages were, I just was like, get off me. Like, what is your, what is your deal? Why do you do that? And that was another thing of like me having an opinion that's not how it works, and him having an opinion of this is how it works.
Yeah.
But, I was very stuck in my rightness back then of like, no, I know the answer and you don't. So, whatever you're doing it's wrong and I'm right over here. So yeah, I just didn't really think about the other ways that it was impacting our relationship for a long
Yeah.
time,
Yeah, I can
but it
relate to
definitely
that.
did.
But then more in a sense of communicating. Like my family,
Mm-hmm.
like my whole family, actually, not just my parents, but my whole family from both sides, they are not good at communicating. So like even when I was a kid, it was only like when I come back from school, it was like, hey, how is everything okay? Yeah, everything is fine. You know how teenagers are. They say it's fine, but it's not. But anyway, I said it was fine, and that was it. Like we didn't really have conversations, no communication. And that is something that I really had to learn when I got together with my partner, because his family is really about communication. And so it was like, oh my God, like, do I have to tell you how I feel? Like, why do you like it now I'm used to it, and I love to talk and I love to communicate, because communication is key, is something that I've really noticed. Like even if you don't agree with each other, you have to communicate that, otherwise you're stuck in that place. Well, also a thing, you cannot know for 100% what your partner is thinking. You just cannot mind read. So
Yeah.
if you're both in that space of you think you're right and you think the other person is wrong, or just something else, it can create that tension. It can create a fight or tension or disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not good.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it boils down to is opinions and not being willing to recognize that your opinions are just your opinions and it's not a right or wrong. It's just a difference of opinion, and it was kind of like a slap in the face when I first realized that. And I started to realize I did this with other people too. I correct people all the time. And then in regards to communication, I realized just recently that our oldest daughter is perfectly willing to tell me what's wrong if something is wrong. And if she doesn't know how to articulate it, it's a lot easier for me to ask her, is this how you're feeling? And then she will tell me yes or no. And I just have been realizing as she's getting a little bit older and she's so willing to talk to me, I didn't have that growing up. I had all sorts of questions, and I never asked them. And it was, I'm not sure, I do know my dad at some point told me that I could talk to him about anything, but then when I would try to talk to him about something, he would get really mad at me, which made me feel like, okay, well, I can't
Yeah.
talk to you then. Um, and so I think our girls seeing us communicate calmly and, clearly has helped them see that they can tell us how they feel too. So, I mean, I'm sure I've told her, you can talk to me when you have an issue, and it's something like that. But she really does get that she can talk to me, and they ask questions, and sometimes I don't know how to answer their question, but then I'll be honest with them and say, I don't really know how to explain this to you, but I'll try to figure it out. And because they're very curious, and they're constantly asking questions, and sometimes the questions really catch you off guard.
Yeah.
But it's so good that they are asking questions, because excuse me, I just remember kind of feeling like I was alone in my own head. And sorry, I'm gonna drink some water.
It's okay.
Whoa, I spilled a little.
I think it's also because your kids, like you can tell them like I'm here for you, but there is a difference between words and actions, your words and your deeds. So if they see you communicate together, they know they can also communicate with you, because children don't do what you say, they do
They
what
do
you
what you
do.
do. Yeah, that's so true. I'm sure that's a huge part of it, because, what I saw growing up was just fighting. And, over the years, I've worked through those things, because it doesn't really bother me, but I realized on some level that I needed to release it and forgive and let go, just so that it's not stuck in me energetically somewhere. But I'm really glad that we are good at communicating and have gotten better at it. We were great at it at the beginning, and then, when we were having our rough patch, it was like non-existent. And then after we got through that, it's back to being great again. It's even better than it was before, because I don't assume that I'm right about everything anymore.
I think that's maybe a problem that a lot of women have, that we tend to be right all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, even just when it comes to when you think you're helping and you're making suggestions and not letting your spouse or partner do whatever the thing is their own way. I think of the example that comes up a lot is like folding the towels. It makes them, that's what makes them shut down, is when they think that you're judging how they're doing something, and they're like, all right, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just going to let you do it because you're the expert, and they don't always say that, but that's what they're thinking. So it kind of, that whole like thinking that you're right thing really weaves its way into everything. And when you pull that string and let it go, it opens up so much more joy and love and communication when you just let that one thing go.
Definitely. Like I now that I think about it, I tend to do that sometimes as well. Like, example, this morning he was making breakfast, and I wanted a croissant, half with cheese, and the other half with something else. And I had in my mind how it looked like, but he did it the other way. So I was like, you could have done it this way. And he's like, do you want to make it yourself? And I was like, no. It is that. And I think it's the same for a lot of women, like you said, like folding a towel, doing the laundry, or doing the dishes. Like, yeah.
The dishwasher used to be a thing for me. I would come in right as he was loading the dishwasher and start moving things around that he had just put in the dishwasher. And now when I say that out loud, it's such a ridiculous.
You realize how ridiculous it is, right?
Yeah. Because and I think at one point he was like, the dishes are still getting clean.
Yeah.
And for me to use my mental energy to just be rearranging things that he had just done, which is a lot of energy for me to use, but then it's also me telling him, you're not good at this, so I'm gonna, so then he's also wasted his time because I've gone in right behind him and fixed it all. And that particular chore for us has become, and not because I kept wanting him to do it my way, but right now the way our lives are working, I load the dishwasher and run it at night, and then he empties it in the morning, and it's like magical because I get to load the dishwasher exactly how I want. And I don't have to put them away. I hate putting dishes away after they're clean out of the dishwasher. So it just really, it wasn't, it just happened, it wasn't something that we had to have a conversation about. I just wasn't unloading the dishwasher in the morning, and so he started doing it.
Oh, that's also a good way to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, because I was thinking like, I'll get to that later, and then he would just do it. And now it's just, the way, it's just the pattern that we have. But it all that stuff, it's just opinions.
What else is something that you see, the women who come to you, what is another big problem that they face? Or a tip that we as women could work on in a relationship?
I would say confidence is one. Just, being able to speak your truth within the relationship, which kind of comes back around to communication, but expressing yourself and not having that guilt of like, oh, I want to pursue this career, but I don't think they're going to support me. and you're making up stories in your head and you haven't even tried to talk to them about it yet. And just kind of being more willing to go after what you want in the relationship and, you know, in other parts of life too, because I just feel like sometimes we settle, and not settle like the wrong partner, but we think, you know, I shouldn't ask for anything more. I shouldn't pursue this thing that I really, really want because it'll hurt my family. Like that was a huge block that I had a few years ago. I've since learned how to sort of like catch the blocks and, you know, remove them. Sometimes they're harder to remove than others, but one day I just realized that I thought that if I became successful, that it would hurt my family. Yeah. And so that held me back, especially as a mom. You know, you go into mom guilt and the kids are still small. And, but now I understand that me, again, going after what I want is another way to show our girls that you can do whatever you want, because I saw my mom working a ton and my dad working a ton. I think my mom enjoyed her work, but I know my dad didn't when we were little. He enjoyed his work later on when he switched careers, but I do remember thinking, like, if you don't like your job, then why are you going to it? I was kind of like this, like, I was thinking very logically about it. And, you know, we throw in all these complications of like, oh, well, I can't leave. It's a secure job. I don't know where else I would find a job. And I don't know about, you know, benefits and blah, 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 blah. But if there's something that you want, you just have to let yourself go for it, or you're going to regret it. And so I think like the confidence to allow yourself to pursue the things that you want to pursue, and to be able to speak confidently to your partner about it. You know, instead of asking them for permission, you're making the decision before you speak to them, and then you're going to them and, you know, not in a there's a new sheriff in town kind of attitude, but like just letting them know, hey, this is the thing that I really want to do. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I'm doing this. You know, not asking for permission, but informing.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Instead of like coming into the room and saying, I'm going to do this, and, you know, you figure out how to deal with it. you just let it. You have to make up your mind first. If you don't know what you want before you talk to them, then how are they going to respond to you in a way that, you know, how are they going to know how to respond that you like and that supports you? Like, if you don't even know what to do yourself, then how can they be happy for you, or how can they guide you and support you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for us to own our own desires, and to allow ourselves to go after them, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned in life or in relationships? So
I think it's just the little daily things in relationships are really what matter the most. Because if you stop doing those, there's no amount of getaways or once in a while special occasion type things that can make up for the lack of love on a daily basis. And that can be just little things like, and sometimes we forget, but we give each other a hug when we see each other for the first time in the morning, or when he leaves, I like to make a big deal about it. So I will like get up and run to the door, and it always makes him laugh, and, you know, just to give him a kiss before he leaves. He's like the opposite. So like if he's doing something, you know, he just wants to be left alone if he's like in the middle of something. So he's like, it's okay if like you're going out to walk the dog and you don't say bye to me, you know, like I know that you're leaving to go take her out, and I know you're coming back. You don't have to interrupt what I'm doing to say bye. But I don't mind like jumping up and and acting like it's a big deal when he's leaving. And that's another thing, is like allowing each other to be different. And so those little things, or he'll, occasionally when I'm working at home, he'll come out of the room and just like give me a hug. And those are things that I was taking for granted for a little while, but they are really, really important. And it's really important to know your partner's love language so that you can really let them know how you feel by speaking their language. And it's not like you have to only speak their language. I find that now that I know what his love languages are and what mine are, I also notice when he's speaking his own love language to me. And I appreciate that, because even though that's not necessarily my love language, I still understand he's letting me know how he feels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So if people want to work with you, how can they contact you, or where can they find you?
Well, I have a Facebook group full of wonderful women who all want to make their marriages amazing. And if anyone wants to join that group, you can go to www.marriedandmanifesting.group. And then you can find me on my website, which is marriedandmanifesting.com. I have a blog and soon podcast, hopefully. And there's some resources on there too. But the Facebook group is definitely the best place to find me.
Okay, great. I'll leave it in the description so people can contact you. And I want to thank you a lot for this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Just that, once you embrace that power that you have to get what you want, and then you collaborate with your partner, magical things can happen. Because I can't see the mountains right now because it's foggy out, but I'm sitting in a room on a rooftop looking out over a pool, and there's a hot tub over there, and there's mountains off in the distance. And like, this is something that we created together. And every time I step outside of our door, I get reminded of, what we've created together, because we had common goals and we communicated our wants and our desires, and we have gone after crazy things, and anyone can do what we have done. And I think it's really important to know that you don't have to just fall on the couch every night after dinner and, sit around and do nothing before you go to bed. It's fine to do that sometimes, but if you have dreams and goals that you want to pursue, your partner probably will be really supportive. And if they're not supportive initially, it's only because they don't understand, and you can help them understand by holding on to that compassion and understanding yourself. And so, yeah, I think like when people allow themselves to collaborate the way that my husband and I have, magical things can happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And it's beautiful that you said collaborate, because it shows the team bond again, that you are a team together and not just two separate people. You are you are two separate people, but you are a team together.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. Yeah. We're individuals and we are also a unit. And it's recognizing that is really important too. Like, you're still an individual, and that's why it's important to fill your partner in on what your desires are, especially if it feels like it's crazy to you, because they probably will be okay with it. We live on the opposite side of the country from everyone else in our family because we wanted to. And
yeah, it's the same with us.
yeah. So we could go into a whole other conversation about not allowing other opinions of people outside of their relationship, but when it's something that the two of you want, just go do it.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you need more support or counseling when it comes to your relationship or marriage, Ryan is here to help you. Just click the link in the description box, and I will see you next time.